Every single platform we use to communicate is compromised, including Google. But don't give up so easy. See, the name of the game is, of course, to disrupt our communication and dissemination of information, especially information that's inconvenient for the powers that be. And yes, censorship is a big part of that. However, in this day and age, it is really, really hard for a country to get away with obvious censorship cleanly. So they usually go about it in a different way. This was a part of my videos on informational autocracy, but I want to focus on this specifically. So there's this thing that happens nowadays. We have a lot more easy access to information nowadays compared to several decades ago, where the risk you run by censoring information in an obvious way is that the people you're censoring it from notice and seek it out specifically because you're censoring it. In other words, if you're caught hiding something, it's gonna pique people's interest and they're gonna figure out a way to go find it. At least when compared to people who maybe don't realize you don't know what you don't know. And if you're not allowed to know something, but you know you're not allowed to know it, then you know that you don't know it. Still with me? We've all encountered or at least been made aware of at least some form of censorship on some of the platforms we use. And there's basically two different versions of this. One is a terms of service thing, right? Maybe certain words aren't allowed to be used, a straight filter. The other type is perhaps a topic that is strongly discouraged. Your content, if it's about that topic, maybe isn't as visible. People can find it if they look for it, but it's not going to be served up to them quite as easily. And that is the idea of introducing friction, because you don't want people noticing that you're removing it entirely, because then they might go look for that information anyway. Alternatively, the people who are making that content might notice that you are removing it and realize more quickly that they have to find ways to get around your filters. And historically, the internet has always had some form of this, right? Leet speak immediately coming to mind as the OG, disguising certain words using similar looking characters. And these methods have developed along with the platforms and the sophistication of the filters, etc. To the point where language itself is now changed very rapidly because vocabulary has to adapt, unalive being the obvious example. All this to say that humans are unfortunately resourceful. And when humans identify a barrier, they're gonna figure out how to get across it. Which means that if you want to control communication, you can do a couple of things. Number one, put up barriers that are not going to be noticeable. In other words, allow people to talk about what they want to talk about and don't outright remove the things you don't want them to see, but add some friction. Make it a little bit harder to get to those things. But of course, that in and of itself has built-in vulnerability, right? Because you have to leave the stuff up there, even if it's hard to get to. You run the risk of people finding that information and still disseminating it eventually. Even if it takes more labor and work behind it, it'll be a lot harder. But your second option, and far more foolproof, is to convince people to stop trying altogether. And how do you get them to do that? Well, you get them to distrust and ideally fully abandon the tools and platforms they use to communicate and disseminate information. You make them willingly give up. And yes, they will try to find the means and tools by which to communicate these things anyways, but you've successfully disrupted the communication and the dissemination of information. And it's really, really hard to just replace a system or network like that in any short amount of time. Because by the time they rebuild this sort of information dissemination network elsewhere, it's the best, most effective thing you can do, whether you control that new network or not. Make them mistrust it. Make them scatter again. A lot of you guys have been doing this already, but it's time to start getting clever about how you communicate. Stop thinking of the issue as something that you can escape or outrun, and start thinking of it more as something you're going to have to work within. Every single platform we use for communication and dissemination of information is compromised, in a sense. But don't give up that quickly, because that's part of what they want you to do.